Well, hi, everybody. I am Christine Whitmarsh. I am the founder and CEO of the Inc. Agency. You can find me online at Christine-Inc., Christine-Inc, Ink.com. And I am so thrilled to have a longtime good friend and also incredibly successful novelist friend of mine, Rebecca Forster, with us today. And I'm going to let Rebecca introduce herself, and then I'm going to go just her bio, and then I'm going to go ahead and start with the questions. And I'm so thrilled to have this on behalf of Inc. authors and all my authors in my Inc. authors Facebook group. And here we go. So hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Christine. It's nice to actually talk to you again. We've been emailing so much over the years. I keep forgetting we're actually real people.
Yeah, go ahead and so tell us. Just let's start with your regular bio, and then we're gonna dive right in.
Okay, I'll give a short version. I have been writing for 33 years. I know this because I was pregnant with my first son when I started writing. I'm married to not my high school sweetheart, but a gentleman I met in high school. We actually didn't really like each other until years and years later. We're coming up on our 42nd wedding anniversary, so that's exciting. I have two sons, both in creative careers. One is also an author and a world adventurer, and he is due to come home after a year and a half overseas very soon. The other one is a talent manager. He owns a talent management company in Hollywood, so he works with that end of creativity. I had a career in advertising and marketing before I became a writer. So I never actually thought about writing until I was about 33, and I can tell you that story when we get into it. So, in a nutshell, pretty much I write all day and travel a lot, and when I'm not writing and traveling and reading, I'm sewing or playing tennis, and that is just me in a nutshell.
That is awesome. I like that. You met someone in high school that it wasn't your high school sweetheart, but it was someone else. That's cool.
Yeah. In fact, I liked his best friend, and my husband used to loan his best friend money to take me out, which I thought was very kind of him. And I'm really happy I didn't marry his best friend. So we're good.
Awesome. So let's get started with my questions here. So how and when did you start writing books? What prompted?
Okay. So I actually, as I said, started writing many years ago. I was a traditionally published author for about 25 years, and I've been indie for the last X number that gets you to 33. And what prompted it was something very unique, actually. I was not a journal keeper. I was not a writer as a kid. The only fictional thing I had ever written was a marketing plan for my clients. That was kind of it when I was working. And one of my clients did not really like to go into the office, so I would have to bring my account group to his home, which was a beautiful mansion in San Francisco. And his wife would sort of flit in and out of these meetings. And of course, we were all tired. We wanted to go home. And one day I turned to it was a secretary, but I guess we'll call it an assistant these days. And I said, "Who does that woman think she is?" And my secretary leans into me and she says, "That's Danielle Steele." And I'm like, "Who's that?" And I had no idea who this woman was. So she was very impressive. I just was really wanted to get on with our meeting. So when I found out what she did, who she was, I was really intrigued, and we were chatting about her, and I said, I bet I could do that. I bet I could write a book. So of course, my secretary at the time takes the ball and runs with it. She dares me to do it, and she tells everyone in the company. We are talking over 100 people in this company. So to save face, I had to write a book. And so what I did was I approached it from a marketing standpoint, because that's what I did for a living. So I found out where I could sell a book most easily, what was the minimum they would require. I did a 3 chapters and a synopsis, sent it off to Harlequin. I'd never read a romance in my life. And lo and behold, they bought this book, and I was just absolutely stunned. So that's how I got my start in writing. And over the years, I have found out that there is not anybody without a unique story. We all come to this from such different angles. And I was actually fired from romance after a while. My editor told me that he would not take any more romantic fiction because I kept killing everybody. He suggested that maybe another genre would work. So that's how I got into thrillers because I'd rather kill people than get in bed. I don't know.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was going to say, how did the jump to legal thrillers? Well, yeah, you'd rather kill people. I have that in my fiction too, as you know. It's just fun.
It is.
Well, let's see. So yeah, and what other genres have you written in? We talked about that. And how long on average, and what's your process for writing a novel these days?
It has always taken me about the same amount of time. It takes me about 9 months. I mean, from the time I quit work and became a full-time novelist, it takes me about 9 months, and I do work 7 days a week. I mean, there is not a day, not a Sunday goes by that I don't actually do something on a book. Sometimes it's not writing, it may be research, maybe editing, maybe something like that. But once I get started, I really am all in. There's another amount of time, which is thinking time. I don't outline. I don't put things down on paper. It's all in my brain. And what usually happens is some sort of concept will inspire me, like the different kinds of witnesses, where the witness series came from, whether you're a hostile witness, privileged, whatever it may be. There's always a legal core to what I'm writing that the theme is appropriate also for whatever my characters are going through on a personal level. So I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of court watching. The book kind of bubbles and does its thing in my head. And as soon as I know the opening and the closing, the very last sentence and the very first sentence, that's when I start to write. And I know people do really well with outlining. I just don't have that ability, or to do a beat sheet. So mine is all in my head, and then boom, out it comes. There are times when it's really intricate, like when I did Before Her Eyes, which is a police procedural, and it was first person and third person. I did have to stop in the middle and do timelines, to make sure that everything was in the proper place. But that's kind of what I do. That's it, all in my head.
That's really cool, because I'm so the opposite. I'm so the outliner, as all my clients know too. I think thoughts. Maybe it's ADD. I don't know.
That actually doesn't surprise me about you at all. I mean, I think, with as together as you are in your business, I can't imagine you doing it any other way. And I think sometimes when you quit work and you don't have that corporate job to go to, that you can tend to be a little at odds and ends, and you have to discipline yourself to figure out a way that works so that you're in that cloud, but you're really still working. So I'm always doing something physical while I'm thinking, whether it's a sport, hiking, sewing, cooking, just something with my hands, and it does allow my brain to go other places. But I also don't work at home because I am sort of a flipperty-gibbet. I've been going to the same coffee shop for 17 years now, every day. And the baristas are like my staff. They're so lovely. They'll take messages for me and, tell people when I'm in, when I'm not in. So it's good for me to go out and have that disciplined arena where I know that I'm going to go for at least 4, 5, 6 hours, stay and work, and then come back home.
That's really cool. I think this is like part of the job here, is just being the controlling the switchboard here on the interview. So yeah, I'm getting this is great though. 17, yeah, one coffee shop. You like a freaking fire park.
I have no idea if you can hear me, but it's very impressive to watch you work. I feel like, do you remember that old show WKRP in Cincinnati?
Yeah.
They work on the boards. That's what I kind of feel like.
We're just making sure everybody can get on. And there's my friend Josie, which is awesome. And hi, Josie. I'm going to take you off camera. Josie, you can use the chat screen to say hello. Well, I thought I was taking you off camera. Stop video. She designed this set, by the way. Josie is my friend who designed this set.
Oh, Josie, good job.
Yeah, good job, Josie. So yeah, we're all going to use the chat window here. So I'm going to continue on with Miss
Okay.
Rebecca. And let's see. So outside of going to the same coffee shop for 17 years, any other particular writing practices or habits that you can share with us?
Yeah. Well, I think part of being an effective writer is to know your strengths and weaknesses. And my weakness is, the first draft. And I used to have this idea that my first draft was really good. Well, quite frankly, my first draft is horrible. And I also know that my secondary characters almost always are more appealing to me than my primary characters. So these are the things I have to look out for. So I really have worked for years and years to make sure that I understand where my pitfalls are. And that's why I edit. I will do full edits probably 6 or 7 times on a manuscript. And I mean, I'm talking full edits. So like I am ripping out chapters, putting new chapters in. These are not line edits at all. This is really content editing at its worst, because I have to be strong enough to admit that what I wrote was really horrible or nonsensical. And that's why I love working with the editor I work with, because she's very honest with me. She knows that the way I respond best is to be told flat out, this is not, this is the problem. I don't want her dancing around it. And so I really learned to self-edit a lot. In fact, I pat myself on the back when I take out, 20 pages and say that really wasn't my best writing. And I go back and put in maybe just 10 more. That's wonderful. But the main thing is, for me, it's always the editing. The writing and the imagination is almost secondary to the editing, for if you want to make your book as best as it can be. And people don't like to hear that. And I get it, because it's the hardest work you can do and the most honest. And it's hard sometimes to look at what came out of your brain and say, oh my, that wasn't really good.
I muted and unmuted myself at the same time. So yeah, see, this is why, I know Marie is a first-time author. So I have a lot of first-time authors, I think, in my Ink Authors group that are watching this. So how do you draw the line, or how do you advise them to draw the line between being very honest with yourself and, like you're saying, cutting 20 pages and say, oh my God, what was I thinking? And where it's just self-deprecating and it's almost damaging because they're holding themselves back from moving forward.
Did you push the button? Yes. I think that's an absolutely valid and great question, because I don't think a first-time author can do this for themselves. I really don't. I had a lot of guidance, because I worked with some great editors in New York. I mean, we're talking HarperCollins, Penguin Putnam. I realized how truly, truly blessed I was to have them wrapping my knuckles, because if it was just me or a critique group, I really wouldn't have known where to focus my efforts. So the one thing I did learn as I was doing all this is, I'm not a good critique group person. I try to please everybody. And so that was not helpful, to be in a group. And I tried with women, and I tried a group with men and women. And either way, I was hearing all their voices, understanding everything they were saying, but I didn't have the confidence to filter through all that when I was a new author. And so I think there is a little bit of a danger for new authors to have large critique groups. I eventually found the one voice that made sense to me. So I would say, if don't be self-destructive right away in terms of thinking this is horrible, this is horrible. You have to let that first draft out. You just have to throw it out there on paper. I call it my throw up stage. I just throw everything out there, and then I'll go back and analyze. I'm not hard on myself. I'm just analytical about it. And I know we're on a limited time, but I'm going to really quick tell you about one story, which is the Witness series has become my most popular series. I thought it was over after 1 book. Then I thought it was over after 3 books. Then I thought, now I'm on the 8th book, and people are still saying, when's there going to be more? Well, here's the funny thing. The first book of the Witness series was rejected a zillion times. And I had to go back and say to myself, what is wrong with this? And instead of saying, you're an idiot and you can't write, I still felt the story was valid. And so I said, okay, I am now an editor, and let me look at this. And what I realized was I had written myself into a corner. I thought I was being very smart and together by making my heroine a sort of feminist lawyer who lived in a condo that had security, and she only handled cases for women and blah blah blah. Well, what I had done was I had cut my character off from any life. She didn't have any love interests. She only dealt with women. She lived in a security building, which meant that there could be no threat to her, or if there was, it was very minimal because it was security. I had to give her a community. And that analysis of what she was led to a character that now had depth and interest, love interests, intellectual interests, community ties. And it was a matter of analysis rather than critiquing myself. And I think analysis, like when you go through your book and you're editing it, do you analyze and say, does that sentence make sense? Is that sentence so long that I've lost the thread of it? So it's not really beating yourself up in those stages, but you do need someone to help you learn how to do this. And I know freelance editors are very expensive, but I just simply wouldn't be where I am now without the editors in New York, and then moving right over to a freelance editor. I can do a lot myself still, but there's nothing like a clear eye. But I do think if authors can learn to analyze what's bothering them, they'll be able to self-edit a whole lot more effectively.
That is great. That is incredibly helpful. And by the way, never apologize for as many witness stories, especially the witness series that you want to tell, because I'm a fan of that series. And I know that we're recording this later for people like Miss Diane Kennedy, who will be watching this later, and she's like your biggest fan of all time. So all the witness stories that you want to tell us, we're total like fan geeks here.
Oh my God, you do not have the time. All the witness stories are based in something that has either happened to me or research I've done. They're all actually quite personal, and that makes a great story too. In fact, who is it? Marie's writing. She's writing her life as a life story. Or as a fictional book. I don't have enough drama in my personal life, but I do have a lot of drama in the people around me, and so I'm always inspired by incidences that happen to people around me and the questions they bring up and the questions I want my characters to answer. So Maria, I give you a lot of credit for being able to look so clearly at your own life. It is a lot easier to be the author as an observer, and that gives me a great deal of freedom that you may not have, because it is your life. So my observation tact is very personal to me, but it is not my life. So I think that's why I can add the drama where it needs to be added.
It's pretty cool. And I just want to say to Josie and Marie, if you guys have questions, you don't have to wait till then. You don't have to hold your questions till the end. So just pop them in as you think of them, and we'll get to them in the next pause. So yeah. Chime in.
And I love that I see Marie saying, it's not that you're not good at writing, it's what's on the paper that needs work. That 90% of times that's true. There are, however, and I have run into these people who are not good at writing. But here's the thing, writing can be learned. It's voice that is the exceptional thing you have to come to. And that comes with practice. I would say probably my first 10 novels were mimicking what I like to read. And it wasn't until like 9, 10, 11, I realized, my gosh, I'm actually getting a voice, my way of writing, not the taught way of writing. But I needed to learn how to write and how to put chapters together and pacing and characterization and all that before I could just kind of like get kicked out of the nest and decide this is the way I'm going to fly. Maybe everybody else flaps their wings one way. Well, now I'm confident enough to flap mine the other way. And I agree with you 100% that it's what's on paper that needs work, but you also have to realize that writing is a craft and it's to be learned. Same thing as sewing, woodworking, anything like that. Get the basics down, then you add your flourishes and embellishment.
So true. And she's a seamstress too. I didn't know that, Marie. Oh, I have seen you sew your costumes. That's right. Yeah, we were talking about that in her coaching call earlier today, the toolbox, and I was giving her some writing tools for her toolbox.
That is fantastic. Okay, that's fantastic. All right, here you go, Marie. I'm throwing this in your toolbox. This is the way I actually learned how to write, is I thought of it in terms of a pattern, and Marie will understand this because every pattern has a front, a back, and sleeves, right? Sometimes they'll have a princess seam, or they'll have, in fact, right now I'm working on a pattern that's so convoluted it looks like origami, and I'm about ready to give up. But in the end, this garment will have a front and a back and sleeves, which means if you have your foundation of your story, right, your book, so you know if the foundation is solid and your characters are solid and your theme is solid, your plot and your story are solid, those are your three. That's your front, your back, and your sleeves. After that, your voice becomes the buttons and bows, you know, your descriptive passages, your expository, and all that is what will make this such a unique garment in my mind. But that's how, and if you're not a seamstress, you probably don't think this way, but to me, it's all like a pattern for a dress. Just get me that front and that back, and then I can run with it.
That is really cool.
Double coaching.
Yeah, Marie's getting all kinds of coaching today. So, period clothing. Oh, so that's a lot of buttons and bows and fanciness.
Oh,
wow. All right. Oh, I was going to move into the business side. I want to make sure I have all the creative stuff. If you guys think of any other creative questions about the writing process, but I want to get into a little bit of the business side of writing a bit here. I want to make sure I'm unmuted. Good. So you guys aren't just trying to read my lips. Okay. And we talked about this. We talked about this a few years ago, Rebecca, when we were chatting about how series are in now. You even been you started our little test part of the phone call today. Like, Christine, when are you going to turn Canyon Road into a trilogy? So you've been doing it for years. So tell us all about that, how the shift in the publishing industry where publishers and agents are saying, you know, don't write books in ones, write them in threes.
Yeah, this was a switch for me. And I have to say, my whole brain had to switch over between traditional publishing and indie publishing. I actually had thought I was retired, quite frankly, as we saw the change from distribution channels drying up, traditional publishers not having places to place their books any longer, you know, printing costs going up. There were so many things that I saw as a marketer that were going to change the way business was done. I'd already had 25 years in, and I thought, well, you know what, maybe it's time to just kind of kick back. And then it was actually my husband who said, have you heard of this thing called Kindle? And we looked at it and I said, oh, I've got all the rights back to my books. I'm going to, you know, put them up there. And that's when the Witness series really took off. I just looked up my numbers actually, and there have been over 1 million downloads of those books. And I'm just like stunned. I can't believe it. I thank you. Listen, I didn't know either until a few days ago because I'd had my nose to the grindstone. And I have to credit a gentleman in New Zealand, completely credit him. He was one of the first Kindle authors, and unfortunately he's passed now, and he gave me some great advice early on when Kindle was brand new, and one of them was to write series. And I kept telling him, no, that's not the way it's done, blah, blah, blah. You know, it just isn't. Because traditional publishing, if it took 1.5 years to get your next book out, you really had to have something going on that was just utterly fantastic for them to want to commit to a series. So I took his advice. He said, offer your first book free. Now, granted, this does not work as well as it used to. Offer your first book free, and then you'll see that if you have a series, there'll be that halo effect and you'll sell the rest of it. So I resisted for ages until he sent me a message in all caps that said, make your first book free. He was just so adamant. So I did, and there were 80,000 downloads the first day. Now that doesn't happen this anymore because of the algorithms at Amazon. However, it did happen then, and I saw the benefit of a free book and a series. Had I not had those other books in the series, these readers would have enjoyed the free book and gone somewhere else, because it is an easy click. And everything on their Kindle is geared to making them click. And if it's not my books, it's someone else's books. So what you want to do is capture the imagination of I don't want to say new kind of reader. Readers are still the same. They want quality product. They want an imaginative book. They want to be entertained. But if they like you, they want to read more, and they want to read it right now. They're not going to wait 9 months for your next book. So that was a real lesson in the new world for me, that readers really want stuff fast. And if you don't have new stuff fast, they want to know that you have something waiting in the wings. And I wrote 4 books, I think, in 2 years. For me, that was very quick, on the Witness series, because of the demand. And so I actually don't write standalones anymore. I just don't. The new Finn O'Brien series is 3 books in. The Witness series is getting its 8th book. I am going to write, we talked about novellas and short stories. And there are a couple of standalone books I was thinking of writing, but now I'm going to package them in a box set as shorter stories, because I do want to write them, but I don't have the time to write full novels if I'm concentrating on the series. So yeah, to anybody writing, I would say if you have a really long book, break it into 3. If you can look at your work and say, yes, there are at least 2 more books with this, do it, commit to it, and make those 3 books. You will not be sorry. You seriously won't. And box set them at the end. Done.
See, this is when your marketing background comes through, because this is content marketing. I mean, this is what I have a lot of entrepreneurs in my audience, and this is what we're told with social media content, blog content, articles. Have that vault, have that strategy that has you, creating content for months and year, however far out you can. So that when the media, the press comes calling, when they finally realize you're an expert, you have this vault of content. So it's like, oh, you need a blog post? Okay, give me a week. And it's like, no, you got to pull something out of your vault now.
Right. Absolutely. And I am not a blogger. I'm not great with social media. I love Instagram. I love Twitter for some reason. That's just a personal thing that I really, really like it. I reluctantly have an author page, because what I put on my personal Facebook page seems like the good enough, but I know that it has to be there. But I do guest blog. So I do have blogs that are around. I tried blogging on a regular basis. I really wasn't very good at it, but I love the guest blog because they usually have a point of view about something that I would like to talk about. I just hadn't thought of it. So I have that. Don't forget, you need a magnet. Your mailing lists are super important, as I know you know, Christine. But I didn't realize how important they were, but mailing lists are really important. Create a magnet. The magnet I created was, I now give away Hostile Witness and a book called Hannah's Diary, which is a novella that's a bridge between the first book and the second book. Do you have that? You should. I'll send it to you. And so that's the magnet I use. I also did something really fun, which is another magnet I use to give away free to people who might sign up for my mailing list. And this one is for people who read the series in one of the box sets. And it's called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Witness series, which I just thought I just love it. So what it is it breaks down each of the books, what the inspiration was, what the reality is, what the fiction is. It talks about the fact that, I use my kids in almost every book, their names, because it's my good luck charm. So it makes it very personal, that the writing is not just something in my imagination and I'm done with it. It makes it, I want people to know how much of my life is really in these books. And so these are things that I think readers really enjoy getting. And if they decide not to be on your mailing list after that, that's fine. But it's fun to get like a free thing. It's like going to the carnival and saying, yeah, you know, oh, you won the fish. Yay.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm a fan of giving away free things. I think I can give away free things forever and people still won't. You know, it's not like they're going to suck everything out of my brain.
I
Only most.
hope not.
Let's see. So here's another big question, especially for those of my Inc. authors that are looking to go the traditional route. Is if you could tell the story about when you first got an agent and a publisher and your traditional publishing story, since we've heard so much of your indie authors.
Oh, yeah. Okay, this was really weird. So, so I just didn't know anything. You have to understand that. I did not know a thing when I started. And way back when, 30 years ago, authors were not very forthcoming in terms of helping other authors. So this really surprised me that I thought if I joined a group like RWA and they would tell me everything I needed to know. And the ones who had really made it played things very close to the best. So I kind of had to figure things out on my own. And I just assumed this was like any other industry, even though I knew there were things that said you should not, or you can't make simultaneous submissions to traditional authors. I thought that makes no sense to me. If I was Coca-Cola, would I say, here's one can of Coke, who wants to buy it? I wouldn't. So I was very professional about it. My letters always stated up front that it was a simultaneous submission. And what I did early on was, I chose 3 publishers and 3 editors or agents, and I sent queries to 3 of them. I figured if everybody said my work was horrible, okay. But what if one person said my work was horrible, one person thought it was okay, the third one would be the tiebreaker. I also figured out that if an editor at a publishing house loved the book and wanted it, I could easily call these agents and say, hey, I've already got a deal. You don't have to do any work. Just represent me. And if an agent wanted it, I could say, look, it's already over at, you know, Penguin and Kensington and all these other places. Seemed like a win-win to me. And it worked out pretty well. Harlequin was fairly easy sell because you didn't need an agent. You needed, you know, just your 3 chapters. It was very accessible and approachable in those days. And so that worked out great. Then I did get an agent from that, and I came to a terrible realization after many years that my agent liked me because I made a certain amount of money, and I was give me a lot of personal attention. I never was sure if she really liked my books. When I said I wanted to move over into thrillers, she was like, oh no, you can't do that. You know, you just don't have the talent. Seriously, that's what she said. And I'm like, okay. So that really, I don't like it when people tell me I shouldn't try. I really wanted to try. So I fired her, and I ended up going to see a friend who had gone to, I want to say Mystery Writers or something like that convention. It was back in San Francisco. I was in LA. I flew up there and I was waiting for my friend. I was sitting on a planter, and this woman came and sat down next to me, and she looked exhausted, and I just said hello, and she said hello, and I said, oh, you know, are you at the conference? She goes, yeah. And I said, what do you do? Thinking she was an author. Turned out to be a VP at HarperCollins, who I know, how about that, who was a very nice lady. And I said to her, just, you know, didn't pitch her. I just said, oh, do you publish thrillers, legal thrillers? She goes, oh, yes, we do. I said, okay, thank you, goodbye. And so we parted, and that was about it. When I got home, I wrote a letter. This is so underhanded. I wrote a letter saying, it was so nice to talk to you about my project, Keeping Counsel, blah, 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 and or whatever it was, Beyond Malice. I can't remember, Beyond Malice. And I am so thrilled that you were interested in the story, and here's the synopsis. Well, my thought was, how's she going to remember? I mean, there were hundreds of people at this conference. And if she did remember, I'd be blackballed forever. So she bought it on synopsis for more money than I'd ever had before. I think that authors need to be brave and bold. not out totally outside the lines. I'm not saying color completely outside the lines, but again, I go back to analysis. Analyze your situation. You're presented with this opportunity. This woman would have been so turned off had I hit her up and said, I've got this great book, blah, 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 blah. I was honest, we did talk about this project, sort of. But you know what? It was a calculated risk I took. It was not jumping off the Titanic. It was a calculated risk to approach her after I got back and she got back within a reasonable amount of time. So that was how I moved into thrillers. And I did get another agent, and I had many agents, but I realized none of them really gave me the attention that I hoped. And I don't mean fawning attention. I mean attention in helping me move forward. I wanted help to become a better author, to create the kind of books that would become bestsellers. And I understand it. Agents make 10% of what you bring in. A lot of authors don't bring in a lot of money. They have to go with the people who are making the $1 million. Totally get it. But after a while, that's what made the decision of possibly retiring and then becoming an indie much easier, because I realized my best advocate was my own work, and I thought my work was getting better, and I wasn't finding someone to represent me in that way, with that belief that I could become, I could sell those 1 million books that now I'd sort of like to go back and say, look, I do. I mean, it's not mean. It's just like, I really wish you'd been with me. That was it. I wish you'd been with me on the journey. And it's going to be the same way now. And so I guess my advice would be, I wish I was a little bolder back then. I wish I had said, quite frankly, I was looking for a partner. It wouldn't have to be anything confrontational. I just wish I hadn't been so afraid to lose my agent, Oh my gosh. But now people don't have to be afraid like that because we have options. Yep.
This is true. That's great. I love the boldness there. See, one of Josie's favorite expression is YOLO. Everything is YOLO. She does aerials with me. That's why she's jumping off the top of lyras and everything. You only live once.
That's it. Yeah. Well, I love Josie just because that's the name of my character in the Witness series. So I have an affinity for the Josie. Yeah.
Great name, so Josie.
And Josie will jump off buildings too. Yes. My son calls it, when I'm stuck with a plot, he'll say it's time for Josie to Hulk out. And that's his thing. It's like, oh yeah, Josie always does Hulk out around, 2/3 of the way through. So yeah,
she
Hulk
does.
out.
She'll try anything in class. I'm the one that's just like, okay, how many different ways can I injure myself doing this? And Josie's already up there diving off the top bar. I'm like, oh my God.
That's funny. That's funny. I am so impressed by what you guys do. Truly.
Josie. Oh yeah, you're gonna have to read the thriller series. I'll introduce you to the thriller stories, Josie. It's all about you.
I do want it is. I do want to say though that I still think traditional publishing is a really superb option still these days. I really do. I think it gives you street creds. I think it's wonderful to work with these editors who are truly dedicated to their jobs. I think it's a good idea to have the experience of having an agent and going through all that. And I would not discount it. I was just talking to somebody the other day about, will I ever go back? And yeah, I might. If I don't want to keep doing this amount of work, but I'm sort of a hybrid. The Witness series is in Germany and in Italy, and those are deals that were done, through traditional ways. Tantor just picked up the Witness series for audio production, and that came through my agent, who is sort of my agent because I don't give him English rights, so there isn't much for him to do, but he handles the ancillary things. And so I think having been a traditional author definitely helped my credibility in the indie arena. So I would hope that your clients, if they're looking at this, will try maybe both ways. They can be hybrid authors. They can start indie. If they take off, believe me, agents and editors are going to come looking for them.
So speaking of that, if they do start indie, what is your, and I know you have your marketing expertise as well, what is your advice on the author branding and marketing side? Obviously, I have a lot of advice that I give to clients, but I'd love to hear your branding and marketing advice for indie authors.
Wow, that's a tough one because I actually have someone who helps me with that. I think it is incredibly difficult to look at yourself and brand yourself. It's like, have you ever, well, you may be able to do it. Writing my own bio was an impossibility. It's like, yeah, I'm a housewife and blah, blah, blah. And then the lady who helps me came back with, you are not a housewife. You are not, all this other stuff. And it took me a long time to embrace the branding that she saw in me. So I think it's difficult for us on our own to come up with our platforms. There are some people who do it beautifully. They just are flamboyant and they embrace, I am the author of the definitive author of cowboy romance, and it's been really hard for me to brand myself. So she kind of does it, and I guess you have to be able to look at your own work and embrace that you do it well. And that just took me a long time to do that. That sounds, I don't know, that sounds self-deprecating, but it's not. Ask anybody, can you really look at yourself and say, yes, I am going to own the fact that I am the first lady of legal thrillers, which actually for a time I was, indie-wise, I was like at the top of the Amazon list for a couple of years, and that was so cool. It was hard for me to say it. So I'm not sure I can give advice on this except to find someone like you and listen and see what you see, because you'll see with greater clarity. Now, the challenge then becomes to embrace it, which I have done. And I do use, I do now feel comfortable with my bio. I feel comfortable discussing, sort of being a voice about writing the legal thriller. And I've done a lot of, like I was actually a keynote speaker at the judges conference here in California, which was so cool because I thought, wow, here I am. And obviously there's something that drew them to want me to speak to them. And what it was they realized that I was writing about them and they wanted to know what made them special. Why were they entertaining? And so I was able to brand them in the same way my lady like you, Christine, who helps authors brand themselves, I was able to pass that along to them. And it made an incredible amount of difference in their attitude of how they do their job. In the same way, my lady's vision of me makes a difference in how confident I feel going out. So I don't know if that makes sense. I know that's not very helpful, but does that make any sense?
It is. And I was thinking of what you were saying because especially as women, have you heard the phrase imposter syndrome? Where you believe.
What is it?
It's called imposter syndrome. And it's something that my own ghostwriter.
Yes. Oh, totally. I got it.
Yep.
Right here.
I got it. I'm afflicted.
Absolutely. And there's no cure.
No, that's not encouraging. What is that?
No, but there are placebos that make you move forward. Yes, no, I absolutely agree with that. And then on the other hand, I know a lot of men who are like, beating their chests, and they are the, gods of pirate fiction or whatever it may be, and well, actually that's a bad, because I was just thinking of a dear friend who's writing pirate fiction. He does such a great job. That's not what I wanted to say, but you do see men embracing their invincibility in their writing more than women. You really do. And I envy that. But imposter, yes, totally. It is very hard for us. It is hard.
Interesting. Let's see. I was thinking of all the things. Of course, I don't have a pen with me. I'm thinking of all the things I was thinking while you were talking. Yeah, we talked a lot about the indie and the marketing there. Traditional. So what advice do you have? Because you said you do encourage authors to pitch the traditional route. I mean, I know, we know, well, people who know me know the classic kind of, pitch packet that you do with the query letters and the synopsis and the sample chapters. Any kind of, new cutting edge information you have, any, the newest strategies in the market that are helping new authors, especially, get noticed by traditionals?
Well, there are a couple of things you can do, and one of them is you can be on the sites, and quite frankly, I'm not sure how how active they are anymore, but HarperCollins and a number of the traditional houses have sites where you can post your work and people vote on it. I had a friend who did that, and he did very, very well. And they did take a look at him. He didn't make it to the top cut, but it does get you out there. Wattpad is interesting. I don't use it that much because I think it's really for people who are just getting their work together. I'm not sure if it brings you the spotlight that you should, but I don't see any problem with posting your work all over so people get used to your style and see what you're what you're all about. I think just moving quickly so that if you go on agentquery.com and you identify the agents that will handle someone who has never been traditionally published before in your genre, and you do a little research. I'm a huge fan of research, so do a little research on who they handle, what they like, which agent that you would like to pitch, because sometimes an agent just isn't a good fit for you. I remember once I was thinking of pitching someone, and then I read her bio and it said she was into holistic medicine and, Birkenstock sandals. And I'm like, yeah, I love makeup and my high heels, and I just don't think we're going to mesh. So, it's a good idea to do a little bit of that research. And I think that you just use the same strategy I used, which was while you are pitching traditionally, you also publish independently, and you do the things that every independent author is going to do. You're going to, look at your Facebook groups and become active in those. You're going to have your Twitter accounts, your Instagram account. You're going to let people know what you're doing. You're going to engage other authors. You're going to look for that community that is so supportive. The most supportive people I have are people I met at RWA years and years and years ago. And we still, are friends who will tout each other's works and let people know that they're out there and that they're good authors and that it's a quality product. So what you want to do is you want to see your work, of course, go up and become, hit one of the bestseller lists for Amazon. That's how a traditional publisher is really going to know you and know that you have people who want to read you, your reviews, all the rest of it. But do this at the same time. I see no problem with that whatsoever. I am sorry that the Amazon, fan fiction, it was called something else. It was a product where you could write for a series. You weren't the author, but you used their characters. And I know there was a name for it. And unfortunately, that's gone now. And I thought that was a great way for people to get noticed and get out there. But there's just no two ways around this. You have to do the work. You have to let people know you're there and say, hi, this is what I write. And then let your writing, be your calling card. You can't force people to like what you write. You can't force people to follow you. What you can do is be professional and be polite and be fun and let people know you're accessible and have them follow you. I mean, this following thing is amazing. I spend a lot of evenings just answering emails and, writing back to people on social media, and we get to know each other. I still write to the first fan letter I got, the lady who first wrote me, and we've been friends now for over 30 years. And I think that personal touch really makes a huge difference. So please don't lock yourself away in your room or your office or wherever you're writing. This is so much about being social and not just about social media. Being social, letting people know what you do, and letting them judge you on your work. And believe me, if you're pitching traditional publishers and they're seeing that you've got great reviews and they're seeing that you are active on social media and you're following what they do, they're gonna say hello to you, and there's your foot in the door, that hello.
I think with a lot of first-time authors, well, a lot of people in general these days with social media, the opposite problem. They're so social they forgot to write their book. So
yeah. Okay, that's true. But all social media should not be about what you're eating. my social media is about, I've been really clear about what it is I follow and what I offer to people. My books are about the law and cops and family relationships and traveling. So my social media posts will always be about traveling, not always, but 90% about traveling, places they'll find in my books, restaurants that I ate at that inspired something that might be in a book. So what you want to do is not be on social media for social media's sake. Sometimes you do, and for your own pleasure, yes, but you want to be on social media so that you're like a dovetailed drawer. All this, your books, your personality, your brand, your social media are all working together to create the impression of who you are as an author. If I wrote about, one of my favorite books is about Albania, where we live now. We've done it twice for a month at a time, and we just love the country. And I was inspired to write a book about being there, and I have a lot of Albanian friends. And so what I will do oftentimes is I will find articles about Albania or travel or their justice system, and I'll post those because they're fascinating. And then, you know what, it sort of leaches right over to the books, and if you want to know more, here it is. And so these things should work in concert. They shouldn't be independent of one another. And so you have to decide what are the areas you're going to concentrate on. Everything else is fun, but as you're writing, so Marie, Stevens, I don't know what Stephen's writing, but you know what, say Stephen's writing a thriller about an athlete, then I would be posting about what's going on at the US Open and oh my gosh, it's football time, and this is what inspired this character, and this is what I know about that, and create your expertise based on your social media as well as your fiction work. That works for me.
And Stephen is actually a friend of mine. He's actually a publisher, the For the Genius series.
Oh,
That you've heard of, like, you know, for dummies. It's now he does, you know, For the Genius, a bunch of series. I'll let him introduce himself.
Really? I'm still on the dummies, so
Yeah.
I don't think I'll be reading the genius book. I need the dummy book. I'm still trying to figure out WordPress for dummies, but that's all right. Nice to meet you, Stephen.
Yeah, interesting series of books he has.
He's not going to be getting a submission from me anytime soon. I have, unless it's about sewing. That's about it.
Sewing for the Genius, Stephen. Got that?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, see, there we go. And so speaking of, being, you know, being a brand, and, you know, I've even found a way to tie in the aerialist things by saying I help inspire authors to have the courage to share their stories. So yeah, so the circus is me inspiring courage. So everything I do, I'm a walking brand. And so I was going to ask a question on behalf of, she couldn't make it today, but you know, your super fan, Diane Kennedy, a friend of mine. Yeah, so I know she'll be watching this recording, and she is actually a New York Times bestselling author in tax preparation, tax planning. That's her expertise area.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, she's my new BFF.
Yeah, she's a very, very successful. So she's in the nonfiction area, very successful, high-level CPA, you know, tax preparation, tax planning, tax genius, tax for the genius. Okay. And she is now she's crossing over to fiction. I think a lot of it is because of you, because she's your super fan. Oh. So a lot of it is the Witness series. So I know one of the things that she's struggling now is, how is that going to work? How is she going to go from being a New York Times best-selling tax expert in nonfiction, and now she's actually going to write about, you guessed it, tax. She's going to do tax thrillers. So that's her new cross. Wow. And I know she's thinking of it as very separate, as well. You know, I've been, you know, known as a nonfiction author, a nonfiction expert in my space, but now how am I going to cross over to become a fiction author? Even though I'm telling her, you're going to be a fiction author of tax thrillers, people will probably make the connection. But what advice do you have for her brand-wise? And, you know, she says making the leap from nonfiction to fiction.
You know, it's funny because I've seen a lot of this, and mostly it's with lawyers. And I do love lawyers and judges. I know a zillion of them who have gone from working big cases or, you know, whatever it may be, and they have translated all that experience into fiction. Well, they always embraced what they had done before. And why not? she's a best-selling author. Honestly, she doesn't have to explain it. She doesn't have to explain a best-selling author of tax preparation books. I agree with you. People are going to figure it out. But the best-selling author of Say It, you don't have to explain it. And then she's got this wonderful thriller. I mean, it is like ripped from the pages of the Trial of the Century. It's ripped from, you know, the secrets and the internal machinations of the IRS. I think right there, that's pretty darn thrilling. So anything, it's just a matter of the way she's going to say it. If she says, oh, I am now writing tax preparation thrillers, people are going to go, huh? But if she says, you know, true stories, the secrets of the IRS, you know, the ungodly, dark recesses of money, because frankly, if I'm writing, I write a lot about criminal cases, but when I write about a civil case, and my husband is now a civil lawyer, he says that is where it's the most dangerous, is when you're talking about money. So when she moves over to thrillers, of course it's going to be dramatic and thrilling. She's going to be talking about money. And forensic, I'm assuming she'll do a lot of forensic accounting and all these other things. She'll make it active, and her characters will be moving, but the mere fact it's about power and money, that's going to be it. And people aren't going to care if it's a nonfiction book she wrote. If the fiction book holds water, and that blurb is right on target, and you know the sales pitch is right on target with, this is the most frightening thing you'll ever read because it's real, that's going to be really cool. I mean, everybody worries about money, about the IRS, about taxes. Yep, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's a great asset for her to have done that.
I think so too. I'm glad we agree. We're both marketing people.
Good. Good. I'll be the first to buy your book.
Yeah, there you go, Diane. Fan meets fan.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, you know what? I love when people take things that are real and fictionalize them. I think I love to be able to finish a book and say, there's enough in here that someone could actually walk into a courtroom and know exactly what was going on. Not fictionalize what was going on, but the fact that I have my points of law correct. And the same thing, she knows so much about tax law that it's going to be chilling because it's so real. And that's what's going to really be exciting about it.
I'm excited already as soon as she told me she was doing it. So I just wanted to address that. So you know she'll be watching this. All right. So any questions? Let's wrap this up. This has been so great. Thank you so much, Rebecca, especially for the extra time here. And thanks, Josie, for the set. Look at Josie's beautiful set. Any other questions? What's that?
I'm reading Stephen, and he's saying IRS agents get bumped off. Well, duh, Stephen. Of course they're going to get bumped off.
It's going to be great. So
yeah, it's just a matter of who did it.
Yeah, who done it? So any questions for Rebecca before we sign off today? And I'll post this recording in the Inc. Authors group. And everybody watching this, feel free to post questions and tag Rebecca. She's a member of Inc. Authors, just like you guys. She's in there. I tell you, when I tell people about Inc. Authors, it's aspiring future authors, it's first-time authors, it's multiple-time author. We have a friend of mine, Margina Holmes. She's a 5-time fiction author. We have publishers like Stephen. We have graphic designers, publicists. Inc. Authors really is a mix of authors and things that authors need and people they need to know. So feel free to post your questions in.
I
need Rebecca.
To pop in more often. Yeah, I need to pop in more often. I really do. And the nice thing, that what I love about this day and age is the fact that everybody helps everybody. That was not the case 100 years ago. And I love that now, because the information is accessible, you can get it anyway. But the mere fact that if you ask a question and can get that information quickly, I just think that's so good. That's the way we should be. We're not a union. We're not anything. We're just a bunch of people with the same objective. And if you and I had the same topic to write about, we'd never write the same book. So we're really not in competition. We really aren't. And so anyway, I just want to say thank you. This was so much fun. And I'm so happy to talk to you again in real voices.
I know, this is so funny. We knew each other in person way back in the 2004?
Something like that.
Very long time ago.
Long
When we moved away and all that. But thank you so much, Rebecca. And thank you to everybody who joined us today. And thank you to everybody who's going to watch this in the Inc. Authors Group and post their questions. Tag Rebecca and I, make sure your questions get answered. And I hope everybody enjoyed it all.
And if anybody needs to contact me, just go to the website. There's a contact form. And I promise I will answer any question I can. If I can't find it, I'll find someone who can.
That's a great point. What's your website? I'm going to put it in the chat window here. See, I'm a bad host.
Okay, it's real easy, RebeccaForster.com. That's it.
Right? Did I get it right? Look at the chat.
I just say type message here.
Oh, so I didn't actually do it yet, so that's a good point.
There it is. There it is. Yes, that's it. It's super simple. And thank you again. This was really a lot of fun. Goodbye, Stephen, Marie, Josie, my heroine, everybody.
All right. So then there's, all right. And then there's if anybody needs help writing their books and all that. But I'm glad that you're all a member of Inc. Authors. And thank you all. That's it for now.
All right.
Brand new Christine Inc. video set.
Bye.
Bye.